Hey guys, Cody here again with Mercury Rising Astrology. It is Pisces season, and in honor of Pisces season and all my Pisceans out there, I wanted to do a little bit of a deep dive into the sign of Pisces and the qualities, the themes, the archetypes, and the significations that give the sign the essence that it has, and how we as astrologers arrive at those qualities, and how some of those different elements that come together to create the archetype of a sign are utilized in various ways to derive their meaning. And so the ancient astrologers had a very beautiful system that kind of wove together different aspects of different kinds of philosophies in order to get the meanings of the signs. So you have the modality, you've got the element, you've got the polarity, you have the quality of light at the time of year in which the sign happens, the myth, the astrological image associated with the sign. All of this stuff comes together to give us a holistic picture and different themes to draw on that kind of come together and describe the sign. So let's get into some of the themes of Pisces and how we arrive at that. First and foremost, we take the quality of light during that time of year in the northern hemisphere. So for the ancients, all of the astrological symbolism was aligned to where the sun was in the sky at that time of the year. And because they were in the northern hemisphere, we got to think about it from a northern hemisphere perspective. So in the northern hemisphere, when the sun is in the sign of Pisces, it is at the tail end of winter, right before the spring equinox, where spring begins. And so during this time of year, light is growing. The nights are still longer than the days, but the daylight is slowly increasing over time. And light and dark in ancient symbolism was a very foundational kind of concept. The light represented things like spirit, clarity, illumination, order, organization. It was the active principle of creation. And the opposite to that, or the counterpart to that, was darkness, which represented things like potentiality, mystery, chaos, and the fertile void, or the matrix from which things are all born out of. And so you had these two things like interplaying with each other. And so during Pisces, these forces are in dialogue because it's darkness dominant, but the light is increasing day by day. The growing light reflects, the spirit's yearning to ascend, to go beyond the darkness. But the lingering darkness speaks to this kind of, the dark depths of the unconscious or the subconscious or the unseen, where dreams and emotions and the, this liminal nebulous space kind of exists. And so Pisces, again, is kind of like this liminal space. It's an in-between. It's this space where, boundaries dissolve and potential and creation mingle together in this kind of cosmic soup. And so the light and dark interplay expresses a deep connection between the spiritual and the material. Inherent in this duality is the light's desire to transcend and to rise above the material world, but then there's also this tension between needing to remain grounded and remaining in the material world in order to, live our lives. And so Pisces understands that the creation comes out of the chaos, and that the spirit comes out of the void or the potentiality or the mystery, and that there's a connection here, between the form and the formless. So the next layer that we would add on top of the quality of light during that time of year in the northern hemisphere are some of the qualities of the sign. So that's going to be its modality, its polarity, and its element. So for Pisces, we've got a double-bodied or mutable modality. We've got a feminine or yin polarity. My cat has the zoomies. And we've got the water element. And so what do those things mean? If we break them down individually, we'll start to see some of the themes associated with Pisces kind of start to form on top of the basis of the quality of light. Let's start with double-bodied or mutable, the modality of Pisces. Every double-bodied sign, every mutable sign comes before a cardinal sign. So that means that it comes right before a change in one of the four cardinal points. So we've got the spring equinox, we've got the summer solstice, we've got the autumn equinox, and we've got the winter solstice. So every mutable sign comes before that. And so that marks a transition or a turning point. And it marks the end of the season. And by the end of the sign, it'll be the beginning of a new season. And so there's this transition, this transitory quality, this liminal space, this quality of changing from one thing to another. And for Pisces, that's changing from winter into spring. And there's a dual nature to every mutable sign. And it's indicative of an adaptability, of a flexibility, of a duality, of an ability to hold two things simultaneously. For Pisces, this is the ability to bridge the emotional and the spiritual with the material, and the consciousness with the unconsciousness. So that's one quality of Pisces that we can look at in terms of its modality. So the next thing that we can look at is its polarity. And so in astrology, we have masculine or yang and feminine or yin, and it goes around the wheel. We start, with masculine Aries, and we go every other one. So it's like this 1-0-1-0-1-0 kind of algorithm. When we get to Pisces, we're talking about feminine or yin energy. Now that's, no matter what sign it is, the feminine sign or the yin sign is receptive, it's passive, it's nurturing, it prioritizes connection and empathy and compassion and bringing together over, action or movement or going out and trying to assert. And so with Pisces, this kind of lends itself to the openness of the unseen. It's a very introspective, kind of sensitive realm in Pisces, and that's partly because it's a feminine sign. This can be an openness to the emotions of others, an openness to the creative flow or to the spiritual realms, those types of themes. Because it's a feminine or yin sign, it doesn't push itself. It doesn't, assert itself as much as it absorbs, it reflects, it flows, it makes, this is one of the qualities that makes Pisces one of the most empathetic and compassionate, intuitive signs, is its feminine quality. Now that mixes with its double-bodied quality of being, a liminal space. So if feminine is introspective, receptive, absorbing, and flowing, and it's a liminal space, that's where we get themes of spirituality and deep emotional connectedness and things of that nature. Then you add the next piece, which is that it's a water sign, and all water signs deal with the emotions, the subconscious, the intuition, things that you think of like as undercurrents for life. And so if you think of water, water flows, it adapts, it takes the shape of the container, any container that it's in. It also dissolves. The Grand Canyon is a great example of this. Like a stream of water over thousands of years created this huge gash in the earth. And so water is very powerful in a certain way, and it's deeply connected to the unseen realms of feeling and spirit. And so that's where we get kind of this idea that Pisces is a boundless ocean. Like if you think of the fact that it's double-bodied and it has this liminal space or this quality of being flexible and adaptable, and it's water, it's expansive. This is where, in Pisces, it's where individuality dissolves and interconnectedness and the realms of feeling kind of start to come together. Pisces gives an imaginative, mystical quality, a sensitivity to the emotional undercurrents. That's all kind of watery themes. It's deeply attuned to transitions, emotions. Think about it like the tide. It ebbs and flows. It's always in motion, but it's connected to a larger source. If you think about one wave, it's like the wave is itself something, but it came out of a larger, undifferentiated whole. It exists for a moment, and then it eventually goes back into the undifferentiated whole. And so it's this rhythm in Pisces that those kind of archetypes that we're talking about to kind of come to fruition. Now, if you have all of that, and some of it we've already kind of touched on, but then you add the fact that Jupiter is the ruler of Pisces traditionally. Modern astrologers will associate it with Neptune, which is fine if they want to do it that way, but I don't associate Neptune with Pisces. The ancients had a beautifully condensed system, and Jupiter ruling Pisces makes a lot of sense to me. So Jupiter also rules Sagittarius, and so Jupiter in Sagittarius is kind of like the fiery, active, side of Jupiter, whereas in Pisces we get the feminine, watery side of Jupiter. And so qualities of expansion, faith, and wisdom that are associated with Jupiter show up a little bit different in Pisces than they would in Sagittarius. In Sagittarius, that expansion, that faith, that wisdom is fiery, it's adventurous. And in Pisces, those same qualities exist to a certain extent, but its expansive energy is a lot more pointed inward and to the emotional and to the spiritual and to the finer kind of sensitive spaces of life. Jupiter expands the imagination of Pisces, and it heightens the sensitivity to that interconnectedness of all things. If you think of water being, again, the ocean, all these water molecules connected to each other, all these waves and all these tides connected to each other, Jupiter expands that. And so you get this otherworldliness in Pisces because of that expansion. Jupiter also gives it a deep compassion and an idealism. Jupiter is about our hopes, our ideals, our wishes. And in Pisces, this is emotional, it's intuitive, it's creative. And so you can see these themes of imagination and creativity that are often associated with Pisces as well. Pisces dreams of a better world because of Jupiter. Jupiter encourages us to see beyond our immediate reality and connect us to higher truths. And in the water sign, that's emotional again, right? So that's going to, what are the higher truths emotionally? Well, those are going to come up as like compassion, empathy, understanding, a willingness to be open to the unseen forces, the more subtle forces of life that may be directing us. Jupiter rules things like teaching and philosophy as well. And in Sagittarius, it might be kind of like the crusader or the evangelist or something of that nature. But in Pisces, it's like the guru. It's like the monk in a sense. It teaches through empathy and faith and surrender and letting go in Pisces. And Jupiter asks Pisces to channel their ideals and their sensitivities into something meaningful for themselves, but also for others as well. There's this interplay here between self and others that's really important in Pisces. They can naturally be drawn to roles as healers, as teachers, artists, spiritual leaders, those types of themes, partly because of Jupiter's rulership. Another rulership aspect of Pisces is the fact that Venus is exalted in Pisces. And so if we think of what the Venusian themes are and how they might express in a Jupiter-ruled, double-bodied, feminine water sign, we get a little bit more nuance about the we get a little bit more nuance about the romanticism of the sign of Pisces. Like if you think of Venusian themes of romance, beauty, harmony, balance, pleasure, these things flourish and they thrive in the moist, buoyant, creative, sensitive, Jupiterian kind of environment that Pisces provides. And so in Pisces, Venus transcends, its usual focus on relationships on a mundane way or a physical beauty, and it kind of aims for something more transcendental, more universal. It's not just a personal love, it's a cosmic love. It's a universal compassion and empathy for all things, And the Piscean feminine receptivity amplifies Venus's nurturing and connective qualities. And that leads us to some of the other themes that we've discussed about Pisces. It draws in that sensitivity, that romanticism, that idealism, even further. The fact that Pisces is a water sign allows Venus to flow freely. That love and that beauty can just be, flowing and creative and unbounded by the constraints of the world. And it's uninhibited and unbound by the material limitations. Jupiter encourages Venus in Pisces to expand beyond the personal and embrace the collective. But remember, like you can think of the collective in signs like Aquarius, but that's a Saturn ruled fixed masculine air sign. So it's going to be very detached, very objective, very scientific, kind of like cold and aloof, and very like, let me figure out the facts and the systems. But in Pisces, this embracing of the collective is almost such a heartfelt and deep embrace. It's not embracing the collective with your head. It's embracing the collective with your Venusian love, your heart. This fosters unconditional love, compassion, and devotion. Venus also expresses the highest form of love in Pisces. It's selfless, it's creative, it's spiritual uplifting, it's all inclusive. That's why Venus is exalted in Pisces. It's beautiful. Venus's exaltation highlights the ability to see beauty and divinity in everything, even the imperfections. That's one of the downsides to Pisces sometimes, is they can ignore all the red flags and all the imperfections. Now, that's key that it's opposite of Virgo, because Virgo you'd think would be the opposite, right? Virgo notices all the flaws and the imperfections and wants to fix it. But being the polar opposite of Virgo, there can be this tendency to overlook the flaws, which is great in a lot of levels, especially when it comes to love, because unconditional love is very important. But there can also be some drawbacks to overlooking some of the flaws. But the Piscean love is not transactional or conditional. It's all encompassing, it's boundless. And that's what makes Venus's exaltation in Pisces so beautiful. Another element that we can add in the mix of all these things is the image of the sign of Pisces itself. And so for Pisces, the image are two fish that are tied by the tail, and they're swimming in opposite directions. And so the myth briefly that is associated with this is the myth of Aphrodite and Eros. And they're both fleeing from this monster called the Typhon. And in order to get away from them, or get away from the Typhon, they turn themselves into fish. And they tie themselves together, they turn themselves into fish, and they jump into the waters of the Euphrates River. And, through this myth, you should go read it. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's interesting because there's themes of survival through connection. They tie themselves together and then jump into the chaotic waters of the Euphrates River. There's this, again, this theme of transition. They went from human to fish. They went from the land to the sea. And so, again, it kind of marks or highlights these themes of needing to bridge the material and the spiritual, or the material and the emotional. And there's this cosmic kind of underlying fear that Pisceans might have to need to escape the material world and the harshness of reality into the sometimes chaotic but boundless, depths of the water and the ocean. And there's this unbreakable bond between opposites in Pisces. There's also themes of salvation, of unity and trust and faith. They had to have, tying themselves together as this theme of unity, jumping into the waters, this theme of faith and trust. And I think the fact that they become fish kind of points to the Piscean ability to navigate and to adapt to the chaotic waters. It mirrors Pisces' abilities to find meaning and direction in the most turbulent or emotional spiritual landscapes. And it's interesting in the symbolism of the sign, or the image as well, is that one fish is pointed upward towards transcendence, towards the divine, while the other fish is pointed downwards towards the material realms. And so this again underscores the importance of balancing the spirit and the worldly aspects in the sign of Pisces. So you can see how kind of all of these aspects come together to give us the landscape or the general archetypes of the sign of Pisces. Now I wanted to we went over some awesome things about Pisces, right? It's universal love, it's compassion, it's intuition, it's boundless, it's emotional, it's sensitive, creative, like all of these great qualities that we have in Pisces, the ability to love unconditionally and to see things through rose-colored glasses and to be optimistic and emotionally in tune. These are all great things. However, there are some shadow sides to Pisces that I would be remiss if I didn't touch on, because every sign has, positive manifestations and negative manifestations, and Pisces is no different. So for Pisces, one of the biggest challenges that they face is this need to escape. Reality can feel very harsh and very limiting for Pisces. They're very connected, and not only are they connected to other people and absorb that energy from other people, but they're connected to something unseen, something larger than what's here. And so it can be difficult to go around in your day-to-day life feeling like there's something more, feeling like there's something bigger or better, or that you're being limited and crushed and pushed down into this tiny box in some way. And so there's this need for Pisces to kind of balance that tension. And they have a tendency to, because it's a water sign, to flow around this problem instead of confronting it head on. And so that can lead them to retreat into fantasies, romanticism, or like daydreaming, addictions, or any kind of avoidant behavior to escape the heavy burden or the limitations that they feel is placed on their soul through the material world. That's mostly because it's a Jupiter-ruled water sign. Jupiter wants to have fun. Water signs, are emotional, and so again, and Jupiter wants to expand as well, so it's expanding the emotional realm. And in this physical world, sometimes it's hard to be really emotional. We have things that need to be done. We've got responsibilities that need to be attended to. We've got tasks that need to be accomplished. And sometimes the emotions can get in the way of that if you're too sensitive to them. So this need to escape the emotional realm or the burdens of that can be one of the shadow sides of Pisces. Because it's a feminine water sign, there can be an overwhelm with emotions. It absorbs everything. It reflects everything. It's like a psychic or emotional sponge. They're very in tune, but if they don't have the proper boundaries, if they don't have the, proper emotional kind of wherewithal, like a self-awareness to understand that what's their emotion, what's somebody else's emotion, how can I differentiate the two, then there can be, a lot of burnout or overwhelm emotionally. They're sensitive to the struggles of other people and the suffering of others. And if they can't compartmentalize that in a way that's healthy, then they can be prone to emotional burnout or, a lack of boundaries, and they can be used or abused emotionally. Because it's a mutable water sign and Mercury is in its fall and detriment in Pisces, they can struggle to articulate what they're thinking and what they're feeling. They maybe also have a tendency to be indecisive or not being able to logically put together kind of what they're feeling. They deal with signs and images and feelings and impressions and these, images in their head, which is great for creativity. It's great for, creative writing, music, television, TV, movies, whatever, painting, drawing, fashion, because you have these crazy ideas. But sometimes they're hard to articulate, and sometimes they're hard to communicate with other people in a way that's verbal or logical or linear. So Pisces can struggle with that. They feel deeply rather than thinking deeply. And so again, that's a strength and a weakness. Another thing is, because it's a Jupiter-ruled water sign, exaltation of Venus, there can be an over-idealism and sometimes a disillusionment with the world. Jupiter dreams big, but when those dreams and those romantic fantasies clash with the reality and the need to, make the rubber hit the road, then there can be this kind of like deep disappointment that the imperfections of the material realm and the responsibilities and the mundane tasks of the material realm start to creep in on those fantasies and those idealist images. And, it can lead to also a victim mindset. If you have this beautiful story out in your head and then you have something coming in to reality test it or to, kind of throw a wrench into the plan, it can easily lead to like a woe is me, like why is this happening to me kind of mentality. But it's important for Pisces to just surrender. And when their faith is tested, to understand that it's not it's not a personal thing, and it's not meant to make you feel powerless. It's like, how can you bring that ideal image into the imperfect world and love it in a way that's unconditional and open without, we have to live here as material beings. Like, you can't get around it. I know all these Pisces want to get out of here. I get it, but part of it is living in the material and in the spiritual at the same time. That's part of being a human. And so kind of confronting that disillusionment with courage and surrender and having faith in the process is really important for Pisces. It's really important to ground the ideals that Pisces have with tangible goals and to stay present to avoid getting lost in any kind of fantasy. It's important for Pisces to establish clear boundaries in many different ways. Make sure they have time to recharge, make sure they understand, where their emotions start and other people's end and start, and like just navigating that emotional realm and making sure that they're protecting themselves but not closing themselves off. It's very important also for Pisces to balance their ideals with realistic expectations and trust the process, that when things aren't as perfect as they should be or could be, that it is still a spiritual process to be here as a human in the material world. Ultimately, Pisces invites us to embrace the beauty and the complexity and the yin and the yang of life, to surrender to the ebbs and flows of emotions, to trust the unseen, to, find unity within the duality. Empathy, imagination, emotional adaptability are profound gifts for the Pisces. There's no sign quite like Pisces in those terms. However, there's also probably no sign like Pisces that can be prone to escapism, to burnout, to emotional overwhelm or disillusionment with reality. It's always kind of lurking at the sidelines with the Piscean archetype. So if you have any kind of Pisces sun, moon, rising, any planets there, these themes can be very prominent for you at times. Pisces at its best is, reminding us that even in the chaos and even in the perhaps emotional turmoil, Pisces at its best reminds us that even in the darkness and even in the chaos and the untetheredness of life sometimes, there is connection and there is unity and there is a universal love that pervades all things. And it reminds us that there are always beginnings in the endings. Like if you think of Pisces as the last sign of the Zodiac, what happens right after Pisces? It's the spring equinox and we begin again. And so surrendering and letting go of past cycles and understanding that, that letting go process is always birthing a new beginning of some sort. It's a very powerful Piscean archetype. Pisces ultimately asks us to feel deeply, dream big, dream boldly, be creative, be idealistic, be sensitive, be compassionate, and trust that the light and the dark within us all are part of the infinite whole and are here to ultimately bridge us together and to allow us to bring a bit of the unseen, divine, spiritual realm into the material realm. So that's what I've got for Pisces. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope I shed some light on where we get some of the qualities of Pisces and how we form our delineations when we're looking at a sign and how a planet or a house might, interact with that sign or manifest through that sign. So if you liked this content, give this video a like. Comment below on if you have any Pisces placements and if this resonates for you and how you might, see these themes coming up in your life. I'd love to hear from you. It helps me learn, helps people who watch this learn, because these archetypes can ultimately manifest in an infinite number of ways. So getting to see concrete, examples from people's lives is super helpful. And as always, if you want more of this content, please subscribe to the channel. It helps. I'm trying to grow it. I enjoy doing these, and I hope that you guys enjoy listening to them. So until next time, I'll talk to you guys later. Take care.